And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence, broadcasting twice daily at 12 noon and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, once on Saturday at 5 p.m., and we have interviews dispersed throughout the week. Let's get into it. Every time when I do the intro, the dog starts getting up and playing with the curtains. She's dead asleep before that point, but...
Not actually dead. But before we start, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do subscribe because it really helps us out. Also, we try to read all your comments live or as many as we can after each segment. If you feel so inclined and really want your comment read, you can always super chat us, and we have memberships.
Absolutely. And before we get into it, maybe I'll say I was just watching John Bolton's new interview with Keith Wilson. Absolutely fantastic. I think everybody should watch it if they have the time. It really instills confidence in the future of Alberta independence and the game plan he has going forward. He also talks about the Clarity Act, how it's completely ridiculous and it's contradictory law of the federal government trying to take over control of independence movements. And Quebec has already put bills forward a long time ago, Bill 99, to stop that. Alberta needs to do the same, perhaps.
And that's what we've been saying as well, that it's, and every time we talk to Nico Lagan or others that talk about Quebec independence, they always bring up the Bill 99 thing. But I don't know what the mechanism would be to try to bring something like that in now.
Well, I would say after October 19th, we're going to need a binding question. It's time for a leadership review and for her to bring in, or whoever's in power within the UCP, to bring in a similar bill to Bill 99 before calling the binding question.
Yes, but I'll start by saying hi to all of you. Michael Drader says, made it. Let's give away some memberships again today. And again, Michael Drader always says that if we get to 100 likes during the stream, he will donate or give away 5 memberships.
Yeah, thanks to Michael.
Random people. Michael Drader says, your dog knows it's lunchtime in Alberta. It's funny because it's always been weird to me in Canada and in the US that lunch is around 12 and 1. Here in Mexico, it's between 2:30 and 3 p.m. So it always felt really weird to eat that early.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. What about when you were going to school in Mexico City? Wasn't lunch at 12 noon?
No.
Oh, it wasn't.
No, usually like you start school at around 7:30. Well, you get there at 7:30. Then there's a break. There's 2 breaks. I think there used to be 2 breaks at my school. So one was at 10, and then there was a longer one at, I think it was 12:30, and then you get out of school at 2:30, and then you go to eat at your house. You eat at your house.
Yeah, because I went to school in both Canada and the United States, and it's always 12 noon is lunchtime.
Usually here in Mexico, you don't eat lunch at school. You eat it with your family.
Oh, okay. Family value sounds good to me.
Exactly. William Robel says, howdy, Nat and Guy. Hello, thank you for being here. And our dog only eats twice a day, so right now she knows she doesn't eat. William Robel says, I just finished watching that interview myself, Guy. And William Robel also says, destroy the like button. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that interview was just absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've been watching a lot of things lately. Some things don't invoke confidence in me. Every time Keith and Mitch Sylvester speaks as well, it invokes a lot of confidence in there is a future vision for Alberta, especially with these white papers and the experts Keith is bringing together. It's exactly what is needed right now. We need to build a firm foundation for a vision of a new independent Alberta so people can be confident.
Mm-hmm. And I also do think, sorry, I'm putting my necklace on. I also do think that what's important is to get those conversations out there and instill confidence in other people as well, because we've continuously seen throughout this week that a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know what organization to join. Where can I donate? What does it mean if I donate? When does this start? So I think there needs to be a bit more amplification of those types of conversations.
Yeah, I'm more concerned.
Clarity.
I'm more concerned about these actual white papers that are coming out. Hopefully we'll be able to make videos on those white papers. So I'm really looking forward to him. He's getting everything from military experts to business experts. You name it. He seems to be getting it together in a real tangible way.
And Wildrose says, hello, friends. Hello. Thank you for being here. Thomas Muse says, good afternoon, Alberta Republic builders. Too funny to see corrupt panicked Carney pitching a MAGA slogan.
And we talked about it yesterday, but man, is that clip making the rounds. Yes. He's not going to be able to live that down. Elbows are quickly going down, not just from Carney.
He's getting on his elbows.
Yeah.
Michael Drader says, and Nat, I'm wearing my Free Alberta from Overreach t-shirt.
Oh, fantastic.
Good. Okay, should we go into, is it breaking news? Or?
Yeah, we got a couple breaking news things here.
Okay, let's go into breaking news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
And starting with from Northern Perspective, and we did get this from Stephen Jensen, I believe, as well. He emailed us about it. Says property rights win, quote this.
And one thing before we get into this, I did see this yesterday. I didn't bring up, I didn't think it was a big deal as a lot of other content creators did or the conservative media did. I think the big threats are coming through the 30 by 30 program on a federal level to take private property rights eventually, as well as a lot of these precedents that are being set in British Columbia. I think, yeah, this is a small step forward, but they're taking giant leaps against private property in Canada. We need to do much more than this. There needs to be a lot more pushback coming from citizens, coming from independence movements like Quebec and Alberta as well.
Says property rights win. The Supreme Court of Canada has refused to hear a major Aboriginal title appeal, upholding a New Brunswick ruling that title could not be declared over private fee simple land. Now Cowichan could be next. The fight isn't over, but it just got a lot easier. Maybe.
Supreme Court won't hear Wolastoqey appeal of Aboriginal title ruling. Decision means private industrial forest land in New Brunswick will remain excluded from title claim over ownership. Private industrial forest land in New Brunswick will remain excluded from an ownership claim by Wolastoqey First Nations after the Supreme Court of Canada turned down an application to hear the case. It means the New Brunswick Court of Appeals ruling from last December is the final word on the issue. The title claim case can continue, but the First Nations will only be able to seek damages and compensation for the loss of their traditional lands. They will not be able to assert ongoing ownership. This is actually really good news. The question isn't settled yet, though, folks. I want to make that clear. It's settled for New Brunswick.
Yeah, and it's not settled because they actually didn't make a ruling. They just refused to hear the case. And you're going to see if just one of these cases get through in British Columbia, that's going to start setting a precedent for most of the rest of Canada there.
Yeah.
That's what that decision has done. It's settled for New Brunswick. But it potentially sets it up to be settled for whenever a decision like this makes it to the Supreme Court of Canada, because they've already set a precedent that we're not going to hear this. That ruling will stand for New Brunswick. But it provides a very, very important precedent for any other legal challenge, either way, to point to and say, listen, on these Aboriginal title claims, you cannot include private property, current owners of private property, and the borders of that private property in any of these new claims based on the justification that was in the New Brunswick ruling. Very, very important. And if it does make it to the Supreme Court at some point, this may lay the groundwork to actually finally settle this question that we've been hoping someone will settle. The issue of Aboriginal communities coming forward and claiming title.
Okay, and we can leave it there. And again, I'm not as confident as this. They keep saying woke is dead in Alberta or woke is dead here or there. No, it's laying dormant and it's embedded in educational systems and a lot of other things. A lot of the time in Canada, I've noticed, especially after leaving, they'll say something's settled and it's not really settled. And the federal government's going at it from two aspects here, from the federal level as well as the provincial level within British Columbia and that 30 by 30 program. So it's something we're going to not only need to keep an eye on, but we're going to need to really raise our voices on as citizens and politicians that actually have backbone, like a Dallas Brody. She's been speaking up on that for a long time now.
And again, there's been other, as you say, examples where people think, oh, it's over, we're done, like with the censorship bills. And now they're introducing even more and even harsher censorship bills. So I do think there is this willful blindness to thinking, oh, the job is done, we're done. Especially with conservatives,
Well,
and when it's actually not even halfway done.
Well, they do like 10 things, and there's one little pushback, and they say, oh, we've won.
Yeah.
No, you've lost, because the 9 other things and the 9 other things that are still to come here.
Sure.
And this is kind of the issue. Even with Alberta independence, it's becoming a bit of an issue. Mm-hmm. We keep getting pushed back on our back foot. We really need to put the government on their back heels. The best way I say to do that is a national conversation. Private property rights is the perfect way to start that national conversation.
And to maybe actually get people in the middle to fully look at the circumstance, what it means for them, and how it's closer than I think they think or they realize. And a lot of people might not even know that it's happening still. Even within British Columbia, there's people that don't know it's happening.
Yeah, and the reason I'm kind of saying Alberta's a little bit on their back foot lately is because the timeline keeps getting extended and then extended again and extended again. We're up to 1.5 to 2.5 years for both referendums to take place. Now, there's mechanisms we can use to shorten that, and there are people behind the scenes working on that. So I hope we really push forward on those fronts after October 19th.
Yes, but also from Jasmine Lane saying this probably doesn't help the Prime Minister's pitch yesterday in New York, but perhaps it will help him actually remove the bad laws that have put us in this situation. Wishful thinking.
First G7 country.
Good morning and welcome to CTV News Channel this Friday morning. I'm Akshay Tandon. We make a start with some breaking news. The Canadian economy has slipped into a technical recession according to new data from Statistics Canada. Economic growth stalled in the first quarter and real gross domestic product was slightly negative on an annualized basis according to the new numbers released within the last hour. The agency mainly blames higher imports of gold and a weak month for Canada's resource extraction industries in March for dragging down recent economic activity. Real GDP has now declined for 2 consecutive quarters, which meets the definition of a technical recession, although the data paints a mixed picture of the...
And it's just so obvious now. They can't even hide it. They've manipulated the data massively just to keep their head above water so they didn't have to admit they're in a real recession, and they're the only G country in a recession right now because every G7 country has been manipulated their numbers. I would say the only one that's really doing well right now is the United States. They're outperforming China with their GDP for the first time in decades.
But let's also remember what Mark Carney ran on. Not only the elbows up thing, but also the judge me on grocery prices. Well, judge him, please. Somebody go judge him. Okay, let's go into your comments and then to Stay Free. Alberta, Stay Free.
Well, I think if you ask Carney's and say, well, recession's a good thing. We can only go up from here.
Todd says there's a bunch of woke on the end of Main Street, Stelter today with Communist Canada flags. Oh, so they're doing a little parade. Communist parade. Great.
Well, Pride Month, I think, is coming up in Canada. I seen an article
June,
about
right?
Edmonton and Calgary are going big this year.
Todd says they block off Main for them and try to run us out of every building and public space if it was Stay Free Alberta. Exactly.
Go figure.
And then the obvious different treatment between both.
Well, and it was the same treatment that we were getting before when we were trying to get our signatures. Stay Free was welcome into stores, in front of stores. They weren't getting kicked out.
Forever Canadian.
Oh, so Forever Canada was getting let into all these prime locations. Well, Stay Free was literally had to be on the side of the road. Yeah. You couldn't be in parking lots and other places.
Todd also says Stellar Council is woke AF. Yeah, I bet. Todd also says, but surrounded by non-woke conservatives, literally surrounded by millions of non-woke in rural Alberta. The thing is, a lot of people have become complacent or haven't been engaged in politics, and they start by taking over small city or town councils like that and then expanding from there. So get involved in your towns as well.
Well, and also don't just write. I don't think we need to write them off because they're woke. I've been watching a lot of woke content to figure out the messaging we can get into them. So like, there's a communist channel that's in Canada, so I can get a kind of idea of what they're thinking. And a lot of their arguments always circle around the working class, the working class, the working class. Alberta is nothing but working class, and Alberta independence does nothing but benefit the working class. And really, takes power away from the federal government. And a lot of these talking points you actually see come up on the other side. So maybe we need to get a strategy for Calgary and Edmonton that specifically focuses around the working class and the messaging is around the working class. Because I think both the rural areas, but these wokies think they're representing the working class, even if they're not. But if our messaging is towards that, it's very hard for them to talk against it, I think.
And I think there's different stripes, of course. So with the actual real communists that do believe in the proletariat and in the oppressor-oppressed dichotomy, but towards the workers, yes, that messaging would work. But then there's also I would call them champagne communists or champagne woke people that are just there to do the social justice issues and just care about those. And I think that messaging might be different for both.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's different from both. What I'm talking about here is sending messaging around the working class because it doesn't just work for that one demographic that I just mentioned. The NDP's entire history was based around the working class. So that really starts to fall apart and it starts to fracture the NDP support, which is directly campaigning against Alberta Alberta independence as well.
But I would caveat that by saying that they care about the right kind of working class. So they don't care about those that might be conservative. And they make it very clear as well. So they see themselves as the working class. Many times they're not.
It doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter.
It literally doesn't matter, because what the messaging is around the working class. You make it one big group, not subgroups.
But you have to be very careful as to point at the correct type of working class that they want to support. Yes.
I completely disagree. You can make the messaging literally about the working class and lump it as in a whole. The other side does it to Alberta independence. I don't know if you've been noticing this. They'll lump everybody as separatists or everybody as this. That's what we do with our messaging for the working class as well.
I know. I'm just saying.
We'll agree to disagree here, Nat.
Because I can't explain it right now. It would take me a while.
I know you can't explain it.
I would have to get into how the communist ideals have changed. I know. So that's why I don't want to get into it.
It's not about philosophy. It's simply about a simple marketing campaign.
I know, but I'm saying you have to be careful with the marketing campaign because it could backfire by saying, oh, these are all the MAGA people. Because it happened with the Democrats and MAGA. That's all I'm thinking about.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll have a debate off camera.
Sure. Wild Rose says, don't ever give up your guns, folks. No, especially now.
And we talked about that yesterday, and it looks like Danielle Smith may be coming after it. It's not 100% confirmed, and I think she's probably already seen the pushback. She's going to have to back down on that issue. Otherwise, it's really going to hurt her in the polling.
Yeah, but help Alberta independence in a way. William Bobel says Keith Wilson is teaming up with Tanya Clemens on a group as third-party advertisers.
Yeah, and I seen that, and I think it really is starting to become the new front for Alberta independence, and it's really good to see. All the things that he's kind of planning with that group is everything that was kind of missing from Alberta independence, and it's going to complement the grassroots movement phenomenally.
Mm-hmm. Chocolate says in BC, 94% of the land is Crown land, open for seizure.
Yeah.
Because they never ceded.
And that's the problem with this 30 by 30 program. Mm-hmm. It's the lands they're going to be able to protect in the name of protection. They're going to put regulations on it and then take a lot of that land.
Wild Rose says they need to enshrine true equality, otherwise it's not over.
Yeah, and equality only happens when you get rid of specialty groups and classes. And it's getting harder and harder to do in Canada because they just keep putting more specialty groups, more specialty classes. If you're LGBTQ, specialty group. If you're First Nations, specialty group. If you're a woman, specialty group. I mean, I can name 20 of them. And the reason they keep wanting more specialty groups is because nobody wants to give up their specialty group identity with the privileges that come with that. Mm-hmm. When everybody knows everybody needs to be equal in the eyes of the law in order for society to really work and to really have Western values shine there.
Sorry. Okay, there we go. Why do you always do that? Whenever you go to the bathroom, I don't go to you.
You're welcome to go to me.
No. Todd says we got to stop censoring ourselves, Nat. Did I censor myself?
Yeah, with the campaign and stuff. What were we just talking about?
I wasn't censoring myself. I just it would take too long, and the guy gets annoyed when I go too deep into any topic.
Okay.
But
and you don't want to overthink things, and I think you do that maybe a little bit too often.
But sometimes it's good to overthink things.
Sometimes, but you look at successful campaigns that have happened in especially recent times with the rise of the right wing, whether it's Restore Britain or MAGA, Trump, whether it's Eastern Europe. They didn't overthink things. They just took very simple messaging and put it out to the people.
True, but I do think that messaging might not work for everybody. And I do think there has to be...
It's not meant to work for everybody. I've already clarified that.
I won't get into this. Todd says, no, being careful. The time for being careful is over. Okay. Todd says, I'm proud MAGA. So am I.
Yeah, make Alberta make Alberta great again.
Yeah, and says great team. Tanya and Keith will be, and Todd says make Alberta great again. Vote B for a referendum. Let's send our message. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yes. However, again, what I was trying to say is that I don't think some of that messaging might work with the younger people that might want to support, like that video we saw yesterday with that guy. A lot of that messaging isn't getting through to people like him that didn't know much about independence, but he knows he wants independence for Alberta. And I'm just saying, there might be too much messaging going towards one very specific demographic that we already have captured.
Well, Nat, I don't think you've seen the cover today, and I don't think you've seen the titling. The messaging is working even on Mark Carney. He's going MAGA these days.
Fine. fine. Don't listen to me. Wild Rose says, we don't have 1.5 years left. We're ready. We're already on the edge now.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. And this is why what Mitch Sylvester is doing behind the scenes is so important. We need to shorten that timeline now. Specific things Danielle Smith and Mark Carney have done, one after another, lengthen the timeline once, then twice, and now 3 times. And I don't like the way it's looking right now, but there are things we can do to reshorten that timeline.
William Ravel says resource extraction, like oil and gas, like the one that's there in Alberta. Yep, exactly. And Wild Rose says they'll blame world events for the recession. Oh, of course. That's why they hammer on them so hard on mainstream media.
Yeah, but this is why if Alberta can get its independence, it's really hard to blame world events. And also, like, a lot of these other G7 countries that are getting rid of their Western values are going into a major economic slump because of their green policies. Trump is completely turning around the U.S. economy right now, and it's really hard to say, oh, no, it's just the global economy. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's because you're going towards communism rather than capitalism. And as these other Western countries turn their back on capitalism, the ones that are leaning into it are going to be highly successful because they're going to start dominating those markets.
But now let's go into Alberta Stay Free.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And starting with, I always hate this podcast, Real Talk, Ryan Jesperson, I can never say the last name, says, imagine giving up your passport. Have Alberta separatists really considered the cost of leaving Canada? And they continue to use the same points that have already been brought down.
Well, I would disagree. This would actually work with people that are non-politically engaged. They're putting a grandmother there saying, oh, I don't want my grandchildren to lose their passports and their Canadian citizenship, trying to lean into this history. And if some older people just don't understand, Canada's turned its back on its own history. The fact is that Indians, Mexicans, Chinese, you name it, they all get dual citizenship. They all get dual passports, but what, Albertans don't? Yeah. Absolutely crazy what they're saying
well, the
here.
Chinese don't.
They need to think about their own messaging here, because if you're going to give all these other nations dual citizenship and dual passports.
Imagine giving up your passport and saying, I'm no longer a Canadian. The very thought of that brings tears to my eyes. I've got 2 amazing, wonderful granddaughters. I want their future to be in Alberta, to be a part of Canada, for them to have no barriers to whatever they want to do across Canada, around the world. I want them to be able to say they're proud Albertans and proud Canadians.
This is a very big moment for Alberta and for Albertans. It's too big a moment to sit on the sidelines. I really believe that Albertans need to be informed, to be engaged on this question, a question that will not only affect Albertans today or in the next few years, but will affect Albertans for generations, like 50, 80, 100 years out.
Some of the arguments coming from the separatists need to have a substantive, fact-based, non-emotional response. We can't let this.
And that's why what Keith Wilson is doing is so important. It puts these in white papers for these intellectuals to see.
Separatists dominate the discussion with their ideas. We have to challenge them. We also, most importantly, need to be able to put forward some ideas to make Alberta better, some new, exciting ideas that we can think about to make Canada stronger, and in particular, make Alberta stronger within Canada.
This is a time for Albertans to not sit on the sidelines, to not be complacent.
That's the problem. They don't have any new ideas. Anything new that they want to do is part of the globalist agenda, the opposite of what actually Albertans want to do. A lot of what Albertans want to do is faith, family, and freedom, all the things that the federal government has been attacking over the last couple decades.
And I would even say, I'm sure some, at least Albertans, would be happy to give up their Canadian passport at this point. And if Canada continues to treat them this way and continues to ignore them and continues to try to stop them from exercising their democratic rights, I'm sure they wouldn't feel very proud to be Canadian if that continued to happen.
Well, I would be more than willing to give up my Canadian passport and just have an Albertan passport. That being said, some people may want both, and they have to be aware that Canada is not going to take away your Canadian passport. They're not taking away anybody else's passport. It would be absolutely ridiculous to kind of.
Well, I mean, I can see it as a form of retaliation. However, it wouldn't be beneficial either for Canada nor for Alberta. Canada, I don't think, would be in a position to be able to do so, especially at the beginning.
They can talk about retaliation all they want, but the wealthiest people within Canada are Albertans. And if Alberta gets independence, they're going to want those people spending their capital and taking their vacation to see other family members in other provinces. I guarantee you. And they're also going to want people, these new businesses and this new economy that's going to be forming in Alberta, to have links to other places in Canada for those markets.
True. And also, Keith Wilson says, quote, I'm concerned about my children's future. That's why Alberta independence matters. I spoke with CTV about why more Albertans are asking whether our province would be better off making its own decisions. And here's the interview.
And another fantastic mainstream media interview. And Keith Wilson is directly starting to target the mainstream. And he's the one person that seems to be able to break through and get these invitations on a regular basis.
Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Prime Time. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on dialogue around separation within the United Conservative Party. But first, weighing the pitch for independence.
This is not something that results in increased prosperity for Albertans, and anybody who's trying to tell them that that's the case is lying.
Business community reaction to building debate over a question on secession being added to the October referendum, according to the Calgary Chamber.
And she says we're lying, and that's why we need statistical analysis. The APP did a little bit, but what Keith Wilson is doing with the business leaders within military, within the business community, and a lot of other communities is making specific white papers with a lot of statistics. So when she says something like that, you can actually say, well, you haven't actually been informed and read the statistics on the future of Alberta, because Canada hasn't done any analysis if Alberta separates. So if we're the ones that do the analysis, those are going to be the only statistics that are going to be able to be framed within the mainstream media.
Even the prospect of separation uncertainty causes people to leave and compromises investment, economic growth, and productivity. Joining us now, Keith Wilson, a constitutional lawyer and advocate for independence, also founder of the Alberta Transition Council. Mr. Wilson, welcome back to Alberta Primetime, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, we just heard the clip of Deborah Yedlin off the top, and she had much to say in our conversation about why the Calgary Chamber is deeply concerned by the prospect of separation, notably that the referendum will trigger significant and lasting economic consequences. As a starting point, how do you respond to that perspective?
Well, I recognize that she's advocating a political position, and she's wrong to suggest that when you look at the situation that we're in Alberta and in Canada, that a move towards independence and having decisions and laws and policies passed in Edmonton instead of Ottawa will scare business away. And the evidence of that is pretty clear. If you look at the report from the Royal Bank of Canada that was released less than a month ago, it found that over $1 trillion in investment has left Canada, and most of that being investment that would have occurred in Alberta because of the uncertainty that's been created by the laws in Ottawa. There's no prospect for us to change those laws. These are laws that are anti-development. They increase the cost of business. They create so much uncertainty.
Pause it for a second. And the strategy, because they've been doing a lot of focus groups before they start investing a lot of money into ad campaigns with Keith Wilson's new group there. And what he said is, you don't want to lean too hard into bombastic rhetoric. It actually plants poison seeds and turns that moderate group against them. So he's going to run a neutral campaign, is what he said. So if his views aren't hard enough for a lot of people, there's a specific reason for that. It's because he's going after that soft middle or even the other side.
That the corporations and companies decide to invest elsewhere, including the United States and around the world, but not here. And the fact of the matter is there's a legal pathway to independence where the decision-making and lawmaking would shift from Ottawa to Alberta, and we can create an environment of certainty. And I think the greater challenge we'll have is the amount of investment that will want to flow here, because we have the third largest reserve of oil in the world. We have a young, entrepreneurial, hardworking workforce, and we have a diversified economy.
All right, you're a King's Counsel lawyer. We've spoken with you before on property rights cases, among others. Why do you personally believe, Alberta would be better off as an independent country?
Well, I do so because I'm also a dad, and I'm an Albertan and a family person and a member of my community. And when I look at the direction, unfortunately, that Canada's on, and how dramatically Canada has changed under the governments in Ottawa over the last 11 years, that I'm very concerned about the future for my children, with the cost of living, the future for grandchildren, with the increasingly restrictive laws from Ottawa, their shift to authoritarian type tendencies with censorship and other laws. And it's absolutely clear to me when I look at the wealth and the wealth of resources and entrepreneurial spirit and hardworking Albertans, that my kids will have a far better future in an independent Alberta. And then I put my lawyer's cap on, so that checks the dad box. I put my lawyer's cap on, and Canada's a unique country. There's no other developed country that has a constitutional pathway for a province or a state to legally leave, and we do in Canada. The Supreme Court of Canada said if a clear majority of Albertans vote on a clear question, then we have the right to negotiate a new relationship with Canada. We'll still be neighbors to Canada, but we'll be able to govern ourselves and determine our relationship with the rest of Canada instead of having it imposed upon us.
Okay, so that brings us to what we mentioned earlier, the Alberta Transition Council. What do you bring to the table with that?
Well, it's, anybody who's thinking about independence and, what they should vote in the upcoming referendum in October, should we stay or should the Alberta government formally commence a vote, has many questions that are currently unanswered. How are we going to provide continuity of service of border services at the airport and at the
And we're going to play this whole thing because I think it's critically important. I will say this. The Jason Kenney interview and all the interviews Jason Kenney has been doing were phenomenally important to us, because I think that's one of the big catalysts that led to this council to answer those direct questions on a timeline of how long does it take to build a passport office? What do we do about our currency? And go in depth, and not just in depth off the top of the head, but through a council of experts that then put out white papers that the public can then read, and content creators can then make videos on explaining and educating to the general public.
The borders. What is the monetary policy going to be? How are we going to transition the pensions from the Canada Pension Plan to Alberta? How are we going to maintain aviation services? So I brought together a group of experts in all of those fields: telecommunications, military, international trade, monetary policy. And we're currently working on a white paper that we'll be releasing later in July that will detail how the transition can occur. Not advocating for it or against it, just saying, if Albertans vote for independence, what does the transition look like? How do we ensure continuity of service? How do we ensure investor confidence? How do we smoothly transition from Alberta being a province, a colony controlled by Ottawa, to an independent country with Canada as our neighbors instead of our controllers?
Pent-up anger and frustration have fueled momentum for separation, which the Smith government has acknowledged by triggering this separation referendum question. On the other side of the coin, there are Albertans who are angry, even fearful of the province being thrust into this situation. How do you address that perspective?
Well, I'm very sympathetic to it. But what I would encourage those people to do is to have an honest, open-eyed assessment of the trajectory of Canada. We have record debt. The Trudeau and Carney Liberals have accumulated more government debt.
And that's another important thing that we're constantly saying. We have to point out the failures of Canada and the direction they're headed. They're the only G7 country in recession right now, and they're only going to continue to go downhill. And look at the trajectory of the United States over the past year. It now has it's outgrowing China when it comes to its GDP. It's the first time in decades. On top of that, the other thing I was going to say is, we need a clear vision for Alberta and the future. And that's what those white papers are going to do. So he's really building on both fronts here.
And that's the credit card, the taxpayers' credit card they're racking up than all of the previous governments combined. The debt servicing alone is projected to hit $80 billion. We have inflation. We have the lowest growth rate in the G20 countries. Canada's in bad shape, and we're seeing affordability crisis. My kids' friends aren't able to buy homes in their late 20s and early 30s. Kids aren't having children because of the cost of living. We have, when the cost of living goes up and when inflation goes up because of government policy, we work as hard as we did tomorrow as we did yesterday, but our money is worth less. So I think people should really look at the authoritarian tendencies that we're seeing from some of the laws in Ottawa and say, is this really, so what scares me more is Alberta staying in Canada and watching this continual degradation of what Canada once was and the affordability crisis. And there's no sign that the Carney Liberals are going to change course. Alberta has incredibly blessed with resources. We have more than what it needs to be a country. There's been 41 countries come into existence since 1990. New countries and creation of new countries is a relatively normal thing on the planet Earth. And we have a legal pathway. We have skills. We have the infrastructure. I think Albertans can do this. And when people look at it, I'm hopeful they'll realize the right choice for their children and their grandchildren is to support independence.
All right. We'll have to leave it there for time.
Absolutely fantastic job Keith did there.
Yeah, and I was going to say on that last point, that's something we can bring up and actually look into the examples of there are countries that have recently formed and that they didn't go through all the alarmist questions a lot of people have about, well, what will happen with passports and the airports and this and that. There are examples of countries doing it. And even, as he said, as late as the 90s, and we have further and better technologies nowadays to be able to make that transition even smoother.
41 countries, he said, since 1990. That's very interesting because I looked into some of those countries. They didn't even have a pathway towards independence. The people just started to raise their voice and demand a question be put on there. And there was no legal pathway, yet they managed to get their independence despite all that.
Well, some of them also got separated by other countries, or they got annexed.
I'm talking about specifically the ones that didn't have a pathway. He's talked about that before. There's been 3 examples of that where they didn't have the pathway. They demanded a referendum question, had that referendum question, and then were able to separate without a second referendum, mind you.
And lastly, from Real Talk, Ryan Jesperson again, for some reason, conspiracy theories, fantasy thinking, nihilism, grandiosity. Is that them? Are they talking about themselves? Hold on.
That's supposed to be Jen from the Line. It looks nothing like her
That's
there.
Jen from the Line?
That's supposed to be, yeah.
Okay, sure.
How do you get normies motivated on the separatist side? Yes, they have real jobs, but they have the kinds of jobs that allow them to devote 10 hours a day, 20 hours a day to this sort of stuff. It's part of their shtick. It's become their grift. If you are the sort of person who can get by on drumming up outrage and then turning that into a crowd fund that then sustains your lifestyle, you have an extraordinary advantage over the sort of person who has to take 5 hours out of an extraordinarily overclocked day. That is one of the major.
And they're actually wrong. She's completely wrong about this. And I actually, even though she's on the other side, sometimes she has good analysis. That's why I play her. On this particular point, what's happened is with all these freedom movements since the truckers' convoy, that's really the origin point of a lot of these. People are fed up with this and they see something like Alberta independence and they are willing to dedicate everything they have to it. And other people that are working full time will donate to content creators so they can speak for them, or donate to organizations because we feel it's crucially important. This is a grassroots, grass-funded movement. The other side is actually the one that they're paying their volunteers to be there to do this work. All these organizations are popping up, getting maximum funding so they can pay volunteers to do 8 and 12-hour days. A lot of people on our side have full-time jobs and then do the content creation on the side.
Mm-hmm. She's just upset because their numbers don't continue not to go up as she would like to.
Problems we deal with. The majority of Albertans understand that separatism is a kind of a suicidal response to their legitimate frustrations, but those people are living their lives. They're normies. And this is one of the reasons why I get so frustrated when I hear conservative politicians start talking about, like, we have to listen to Alberta's grievances. They're listening almost exclusively to the loudest minority and completely ignoring the 70% of Albertans who are on a spectrum from, yeah, I'm frustrated with Ottawa, but like we can work through it, to I'm actually pretty happy with the status quo. How do we inspire?
What she's failing to talk about there is, yeah, maybe 35% want, but she's saying there's 70% against, and there is not. The question is not whether to separate now. It's whether do we want a better deal with Ottawa now? Then Ottawa gets a little bit of time to fulfill that deal, and then we take a secondary vote to see if the people actually think Ottawa fulfilled that deal.
That's why it's important to start framing it in that way now.
There are more normal people to get passionate, engaged, and involved with politics.
How do you do that? That's a great question. I don't
because normal people aren't that passionate about politics. There is a fundamental difference between Western alienation and Western grievance and Western separatism. Western separatism is not a credible answer to any of the grievances. They're two separate things. And secondly, Western separatism is a movement that is grounded not only just in legitimate grievances, but it's also grounded in conspiracy theories, fantasy thinking. It's grounded in nihilism. It's grounded in grandiosity. These are two very different things. One of these things, separatism, has grown out of Western alienation, but to conflate legitimate Western alienation and grievances with the separatist movement.
And these are highly emotional issues, these freedom issues, such as the jibby jab, what happened in the truckers' convoy. I mean, I can go on and on. There was a march across Canada. We covered that. This channel has been covering years, different freedom causes around the world that all seem to be interrelated. And people on the grassroots level are motivated for change, not just in Canada, not just in Alberta, but all over the world. The problem with the other side is they're asking, well, how do we get people involved on the nationalist side? You don't, because you're a bunch of globalists that have dumbed down your voters and not wanting them politically engaged. And that's the issue you're going to have. You spent decades trying to not have people politically engaged because you thought that was to your advantage. You would simply bring in massive amounts of immigrants, indoctrinate them through the mainstream media, and that would be your new voter bloc. And it's backfiring now.
And especially with, what was that guy's name that lost for the Liberals? To an actual Indian person, because everybody
I can't remember his name, but it was in on the east coast of Canada there.
And that's just a perfect example and a microcosm of what their tactics have actually led to. And now they have no idea what to do.
Well, and that's why that first half was a bunch of BS. She's saying that a lot of people on our side are doing this full time and it's a grift. That's not the case at all. You can look back at our history, at the Fringe's history, at anybody else's history. We've been fighting these freedom causes for a long, long time. And this is just happens to be the cause that actually can change the paradigm, not just trying to push back and push back. A lot of people around the world are going to be looking at Alberta independence and saying, if they can do it, we can do it.
Well, also because they're interconnected. Of course, what happened during the Jibby Jab era, the Freedom Convoy, has led to more realization and more people realizing of what Canada and the system itself, the Westminster system, the federalist parliamentary system, everything that Canada does represent and has done, especially during the past 15 years, but even from before then. Again, there's been separatist movements within Alberta for the past 90-something years. So people just woken up to that, and they can't have that because they want their voters and their people dumbed and without really knowing, and just listening to them, to the experts, to the people that know it properly.
Who's paying for the national side? It's obvious who's paying for it. The Albertan government through remittance payments to the federal government, and then the federal government is going to be funneling this money in against Alberta. They're going to have to pay their volunteers. Very few volunteers on the other side are going to commit full time to this. Our side, we are committed, and we've been committed for years to not just Alberta independence, but pushing back against what's going on in Western society in general.
But now let's go into your comments. Todd says, I'm here to tell him, Nat, be for referendum, boys and girls, men and women alike. The younger generations are with us. I think they are, but I just think they need a little bit better information. That clip from John talking to Albertans concerned me a little bit that we played yesterday. Hearing that young man wasn't able to fully describe or even say why he was for independence.
Oh, I was absolutely fine with it. He was still very much for it.
Yes, but I think there's an information gap and a way of transmitting that information there's still a big gap there.
Yeah, but
I worked in high schools. I know the communication, the way young people communicate is very different, and the way they receive the messaging will be very different.
You're going to have to realize the messaging is not going to be available in depth to every single person. It's very surface level when people have full-time jobs like that gentleman did yesterday. That's why it wasn't concerning, because he has a full-time job, because he has a full life schedule, yet he was able to get the messaging enough to be a very hardened supporter of Alberta independence. I was very happy with it.
Okay. Well, we have different priorities. Todd says, if we keep repeating the message over and over, the masses will believe it. I believe Melanie Jolie, that twit said that. Yes. Todd says, they only ever spew assertions and proclamations, never any substance or facts to back it. True. And they have gotten, again, people accustomed to just go with, okay, we'll believe them because they're the experts. They're the ones that know about it. I don't know anything.
We also have to get our facts in line as well. And that's why, again, I keep bringing it up, but these white papers are going to be crucially important to being able to support, point to direct statistics from experts within different communities to say, these are the only statistics that I see. The federal government hasn't provided any counter statistics.
And Michael Drader says, keep hitting that like button. Thank you so much. Says, my Google Play balance is burning a hole into my Google Wallet. And says, and I can't purchase UFC Freedom 250 yet.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's going to be a great one there.
That's the one at the White House?
That's the one at the White House, yeah. Oh.
Bless you.
Oh,
see, that's why I moved my camera.
Let's go to your camera for a minute.
Wild Rose says, commies are living in La La Land. Well, they live in a place where they think they have more power to actually further their ideas than they have, and that their ideas will work the exact same way that they're planning for them to work. Ajit Desai, I'm guessing, says 4 poles of sovereignty: USA, India, Russia, China. USA, dominant power; India, growing power emerging from Reticence, Russia weakened power, China aspiring power in decline.
Yeah.
I agree with that last one. I don't know if I agree with the India part, but yeah.
And yeah, well, I don't know, because that thing keeps getting to me. Oh, you're
What
not going
thing?
to have a Canadian passport the
you're
next
still on
day.
that?
And because you really start thinking about it, and it's like, well, maybe Alberta wants to revoke everybody else's ability to come into Alberta, because if there is a major collapse in the rest of Canada, you're going to have massive inflows of people into Alberta, and it's going to completely change the voting patterns of conservatism for the last 93 years.
And also by being able to manage have their own trade talks with the US, but also with other countries, I'm guessing in Europe, etc. Alberta would be able to actually establish better conditions that maybe even the Canadian passport has. They could establish better trade deals and agreements on immigration and on cross-border stuff. I don't know what it's called, but cross-border stuff as well. So maybe the Canadian passport might be worse off than the Alberta passport was. And so people wouldn't want the Canadian passport anymore, because with the Alberta one, they have more opportunities in the US, for example.
Well, you could see what's going to happen over the next few years if more and more countries start making alliances with the United States and choosing freedom and the traditional Western values. The Canadian passport is going to become severely weakened, because you're literally flooding your country with mass immigration. That's now a security threat.
Well, the US has already said that.
Rather than a benefit.
The US has already said that, because they've found a lot of illegal immigration coming from Canada lately. They're considering doing something about the deals they have with Canada regarding visas and the passport
Cross-border
itself.
relations.
Yes, that one. Thank you. William Rebel says, it's Friday. My brain isn't working properly. William Rebel says, if that BC land is open for seizure, maybe Alberta can make claims on it for access to the sea.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that would be a chess, what's it called?
Chess move.
That. But when you checkmate, tell you it's not working today. Charlotte says fear mongering, it's all they have. Exactly. And again, they come from a mindset where everything they're thinking is what's actually going to happen. They've lost the ability to think critically and to look at different ways in which the future could actually disinvolve. No, could actually happen.
Evolve.
Devolve. Thank you.
Evolve. Yeah.
What's happening to me? Charlotte says, tell us an actual benefit of staying.
I picked the right day to debate you on a couple of topics there.
Why are you debating me?
Because I just disagree with you sometimes.
Charlotte says, tell us an actual benefit of staying. There's none. Exactly. And that's the thing. They fear monger. They say everything that will go bad when Alberta leaves, but they don't say what's actually good about staying. They've just focused on saying, well, they talk about the history and the tradition, but that's about it. And they've purposefully destroyed that already. So they have no... Has somebody ever, because Kenny didn't do it during the debate. He didn't give points to stay in Canada. He just fear-mongered about what is his point.
They do give points, and their points are they lean on the old statistics of Canada, not the new ones, and they lean on the old history and what Canada was, and they try to bring that into a new light for people that don't realize that Canada is collapsing in the way that it is. And that's what they're trying to do, because all the things that they're actually reciting, they're trying to erase at the same time. That's why it doesn't work very well.
So then it would be important to get that messaging across specifically about what Canada actually looks like today.
Well, yeah, and it's very easy to do because the statistics on the direction Canada is heading, especially with no USMCA coming up and it being in a recession officially yesterday, I think it started. It's going to be easy to point that out, but we need the counter side. We need those white papers about the projected revenues of Alberta, the projected military status of Alberta, all these other things, because there has been no white paper made by the other side. So when we recite those statistics on mainstream media, there will be no counterpoint.
And hold on, where am I? DeBilver says, oh no, I lost it. Here, DeBilver says, hi all Alberta Republicans. Hello, thank you for being here. And says, I really think liberals are falling apart. Carney in New York, make America great. What a joke.
Yeah, and you got to really ask yourself, how is that going to affect his base? Like, there was already some fracturing there. And I said, well, he's just going to transition him to the left. He's not going to be able to transition that way if he's talking about MAGA, 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 make America great. Maybe he's actually making Alberta great again and letting us separate.
Thomas Muse says, Keith said something very important to John Bolton. We have the truth on our side. True. But we have to be able to spread that truth out and spread those statistics and be able to tell people, no, this is what's actually happening. They may be telling you this, but look at the statistics. Look at what happened in the past 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, and with Keith Wilson starting a neutral organization, because the polling is showing if you're too hard on the messaging, it actually turns people against independence. The other side is coming with hard messaging. That's going to turn that middle against them. As far as content creators go, sometimes it helps get clicks and views to be bombastic, but that may hurt us in the long run. So maybe toning it down just a little bit so we can win this thing.
And that's kind of what I was saying. If they're already a little bit put off by the messaging and the constant talk about this and people being very bombastic, doing it more won't help them. It might actually turn them against. So let the other side do that. Let them be all crazy.
Well, and then when these white papers and other things come out, if we can make more educational videos, more scripted video, things like that aren't really poking the other side or really pushing hard against the other side. It's just putting the facts and information forward for the general public to make their own decision and plant that seed.
Because I'm thinking, there's that one podcast that I hate, but they do it very well. They do make like mini documentaries. Oh yeah, on the left.
There's a few, and especially in the States.
Yeah, in
Vox.
the States.
I think Vox.
No, but it's not Vox. There's a very specific one. They're very, very lefty, very communisty, very for the people and for the working class. But their messaging, you can see their messaging is there, but they go at it very softly.
Yeah.
So instead of, for example, saying, did you know that everybody's stealing from the CPP, blah, blah, blah. I know that works sometimes, but being able to say, did you know where your CPP actually ends up? Do you want to know what your CPP is actually being invested in? All that money that you're supposed to get to retire might not actually be there when you... So changing the way messaging works. And I do think looking at organizations in the US, because they've been able to do it, like Turning Point and what Charlie Kirk was doing and what they maybe not continue to do right now, but the way that they got so many young people behind them, I think is important, because sometimes what we think works because it works for us is not going to work for somebody else. And being able to acknowledge that and say, well, these people are good to go on this and message to these kinds of people, and then these people are good to message at that kind of people.
Well, I was thinking about something else today, and I was thinking like Mark Carney's trying to claim the Clarity Act. It's actually illegal, and Quebec kind of pointed that out. Keith Wilson is pointing that out as well. It tries to take the sovereignty away from the provinces and make the decision for them. That being said, maybe ultimately what he wants is a unilateral declaration for Alberta to have to walk away and take that hard move. Why? Because he would keep all the CPP at that point. So at least it would be a huge payout for him, and the negotiations wouldn't be 50-50. Canada would basically get to keep most of what they have through Alberta, and then they would get control of all the pipelines that run through other provinces as well. I mean, the oil could be cut off, but
I was also thinking, sorry.
That was actually a good idea what you were saying, because we've been talking a lot about making educational content and edited videos.
Because I'm thinking a lot about it now.
Because we used to do really good scripted videos, and man, what you were just saying would work very well.
Because I literally just remembered when we talked to Clyde Do Something, the curtains. When we were talking to Clyde Do Something. Can you see it on my? Yeah. No, you can't. We were talking to Clyde Do Something. He was giving us some suggestions about what to do. You distract me about what's working on YouTube right now or recently. And he did say curiosity actually is working a lot better than shock and alarm and those kinds of videos. Right now, getting people curious and wanting to stay throughout the video actually works better than the yelling and the, oh my God, you won't believe what's happening. But being like, did you know, blah, 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 blah. And then get them like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I want to know more. And getting that curiosity sparking in, and the seed being planted in the head. Yeah. As we continuously say. I'm making no sense today. I'm so sorry. Dara Robinson said, I'm thinking in Spanish today for some reason. So everything I want to say, I'm thinking in Spanish.
Well, and I will say the edited videos will go very well. We have 2 other sets built. We're waiting for some equipment. Actually, one of the pieces of equipment went really wrong. I'm like, why hasn't it arrived yet? It's a switcher board for all the cameras to go into. And I said, check the date on that. And it said November. And it was coming from Europe. It was from Amazon, but I said, oh my God, cancel that. We got to get one coming from the US.
That is one of the annoying things about being in Mexico. It's not as easy to get things like equipment, for example. Daryl Robinson says, hi, Nat and Guy. Canada signed an MOU with China's National Energy Admin. Is Canada about to sell Alberta resources to China without Alberta's consent? Well, I mean, Daniel Smith did sign that MOU already, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they start getting massive deals cut with China that there's going to be clauses in there where if Alberta gets its independence, it's still going to be required to sell those resources to them. This is why I want no more resources deal until after a binding referendum question takes place. I don't want to be upholden to contracts that were signed by nationalists or federalists.
Charlotte says, fear and loathing in Las Laurentia. Yes.
And let's go into Alberta. Oh.
Michael Drader says, we interrupt this program to bring you flannel decor because you stepped in front of the camera. I was trying to go to me, but then you would have seen him playing with the curtain. So, okay, now let's go into Alberta politics, right?
Yeah, yes. Alberta politics.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And starting with Keith Wilson. Sorry, because we just did one with Keith Wilson. Says, quote, as Jason Nixon knows, Alberta does not need to start a new country from scratch if we become independent. Alberta independence means the Alberta government taking responsibility for the few known services Ottawa currently provides on our behalf. An independent Alberta would assume and administer functions such as border services, passports, immigration, income tax collection, national parks, monetary policy, and a focused specialized defense force.
Yeah, and all this seems really easy. We've seen a clip from the other side, and then they mentioned all that, and they said that's not going to happen. That's impossible for them to do. And for conservatives, it's like, that seems simple for us. For liberals that have the government doing everything, they're like, oh yeah, we can never do that. Let's just not even attempt an independence movement.
Says an independent Alberta would have the means to do it. More than $23 billion per year that currently leaves Alberta for Ottawa through equalization could instead stay here to fund Alberta's expanded responsibilities. Not to mention the increased revenues from finally unleashing Alberta's true economic potential by freeing ourselves from Ottawa-imposed constraints. Alberta has the people, resources, institutions, and economic strength to take over the limited services and roles that Ottawa currently provides.
And we also have $500 billion that there was a research paper done that we would be eligible for to put against our natural resources to get all that and a little bit more kind of off of the ground.
Independence is about replacing distant federal control with accountable Alberta decision-making and freeing Albertans and our economy from Ottawa's control. Because 880 Ched...
Oh, we can just play the clip here.
Okay, well, so this is Jason Nixon talking.
Well, I think that, that's not a very accurate statement, and there's nothing out there that I've seen that could back that statement up yet. A lot of assumptions there, and so we need to show what this would actually cost. Look, starting up a new country isn't cheap. I don't think anybody who stops and thinks about that would be able to realistically say that. Now, coming up with accurate numbers to be able to articulate that is also not a simple task. This is not something that we can just go back and see comparables across the world of what that would look like. But there are costs of setting up this process, and it certainly needs to be taken into account. And anybody who's presenting that this would just automatically happen with little financial impacts, I don't think is actually being very accurate.
Well, and it goes exactly back to why Keith Wilson is making these white papers, bringing these experts in. And you have to remember, Alberta's extremely small when you compare it to the rest of Canada. So to set up a lot of these systems, it's going to be very easy, very quick to do. And you can focus a lot of the infrastructure within Calgary and Edmonton to start, and then slowly bring it out from there. So you can actually get it off the ground in a fairly quick and efficient manner.
But also, and I don't know if you want me to go into this article, but also CTV is now saying, and fear-mongering even more, saying Alberta referendum could cause real damage to province's reputation, new group claims.
Yeah, and we talked about this yesterday, but man, you know what real damage is sticking with Canada. Yeah. Canada's reputation around the world is turning its back on Western values, turning its back on freedom, bringing in mass censorship. They're looking more and more like China every day. I don't want to be associated with Canada anymore. Because the direction they're going. I'd rather be a free and independent Alberta where we have a neighbor to ourselves that exemplifies those values, especially right now.
And that's the thing. They want you to believe that Canada's reputation is still the one that they tell internally to their citizens that it is around the world. But it's not. Even recently. I mean, in the US, they've been laughing at Canada for the longest time, especially the Conservatives, but even some Liberals have started to say, I mean, Canada's going a little bit kooky and crazy and they're not managing their economy very well. But now even here in Mexico, I used to hear people not believe me when I would try to explain how bad Canada was. That's been changing. And recently I talked to some pretty liberal friends and they could admit, yeah, Canada seems like they're not on the right path. Even though Carney is really good at his speeches, their economy is not doing as good as they continue to say. So it's reaching further out and the reputation of Canada is already not really good.
Yeah, we have a article later, and maybe I'll just talk about it in case we don't make it because we're running a little short on time today. But the world... best countries in the world list came out, and Canada was below the United States this year for the first time in a long time. So
ooh, that must hurt in the ego because again, one of the
and then you have Carney doing a speech where he's saying we're going to help make America great again. well, I don't know what your base is going to think about that, Mr. Carney.
And also, how do you pretend to do that if you can't even make Canada good? But I was going to say that might hurt Canadians a lot in the ego, because one of the few things that's still, at least the way I see it, one of the few things that still represent a Canadian identity is feeling superior to the US.
Yeah.
That is one of the few things that they still do.
They were always top on the list. Now I think they're like 19th. And that is with a lot of money pushed into that to get a high ranking.
True.
So...
And lastly, the really big show says, quote, the people who fuel separation movements are not the separatists. They are the people who dismiss...
We're not going to play the clip. It's really long. I just wanted you to actually read this top part here because I think it's absolutely crucial.
They're the people who dismiss, condescend, and refuse to address legitimate grievances. Brexit was fueled by the people who called Leave voters ignorant. Trump was fueled by the people who called his supporters deplorable. Alberta's separation movement is being fueled by the Louis E.B. Guilbeault class, who look at 300,000 Albertans signing a Leave petition and see a foreign-funded MAGA conspiracy instead of a legitimate grievance. At what point does dismissing the people leaving become more damaging than addressing the reasons they want to go? Jim and Ian argued today that this kind of condescension is doing more damage to Canadian Confederation than any Alberta separatist ever could.
Yeah.
And let them, I would say. Absolutely. Let them continue to do that. And let's continue to point out when they're doing it and the damage that they're actually causing. Hold on. Oh.
Yeah, let them hang themselves with their own talking points. Keith Wilson, again, is running a neutral campaign here and is going to start running on facts and informative facts and let people make the decision for themselves. The other side is really pushing negativity, and what a lot of the polling and the groups that were polled showed is when you use that kind of marketing, it's actually pushing people to the other side. This is exactly what happened in Brexit.
And yet, because they think they're superior and know everything, they won't listen to that. Well, they'll continue to try to do it.
But if they don't do it and they try to lean on facts, the facts aren't on their side. So they have two options here. They can try to be cordial, use facts that don't benefit them and don't actually, I think, help win hearts and minds, or they can go complete negative campaign, which has worked in the past with the elbows up campaign. So maybe he's looking at that like, I had success with that. We don't have the facts on our side. Let's keep our elbows up here. Well, but he's trying to negotiate a deal with the United States at the same time. It's hard to keep one elbow up, one elbow down. Alberta down. America.
And then bending over for China as well. I mean, it's like he's playing Twister.
Yeah.
Canadian Spider-Man says, good morning, Nan and the guy. Good morning. And now we'll go into your comments and then into Alberta personalities. Todd says, wait till Guy sees some of my flannels. LOL, he's going to want him, the red and black with the ripped off sleeves guy. Would you wear that? Big, nice, thick collar. Let's go. Red and black flannel for life.
I could get a mullet as well. They call me Joe Dirt.
Okay. Hold on. Then you can do that over there by yourself.
I like flannels a lot, but they're hard to find in Mexico.
And it's
good
hot.
ones.
It's hot here.
Yeah.
I mean, not today, but...
It's actually cooler here than it is in Alberta.
Yeah, right now it is. Canadian Spider-Man says Alberta will be free. Yes, it will. And also says, Clyde, do something is a smart guy. I am in his chat all the time.
Absolutely. And we interviewed him. He was one of the first people to come out in favor of Alberta independence as far as national content creators go. Other national content creators wouldn't touch it. They're slowly starting to come around. Clyde just planted the flag right off the beginning.
Canadian Spider-Man says, hold on. We were both in Worcester at the same time and have chatted a lot on Discord with Clyde.
Fantastic.
Michael Drader says, Carney, good at speeches. Well, he has several brain farts before je parle français.
He's getting really bad because I think he really honestly has PTSD of what happened to Brexit, number one, and he doesn't know how to approach Alberta independence because all the statistics are against him. He wants to run an elbows up campaign where he can lump Trump with Alberta, but a lot of people in Alberta like Trump, number one. Number two, he also has to negotiate with Trump for a better USMCA. He is really in a pickle here. His speeches were really playing well to the globalist crowd on a global basis, but they're no longer playing well within Canada even.
No, because people can go outside and look at what happens when they try to go grocery shopping.
Well, the facts are starting to emerge, and what they're seeing is middle powers are not uniting, they're collapsing one on top of another.
William Robel says, well, Chavez and Maduro signed deals with China about paying back debts with oil, and then when the U.S. removed Maduro, Trump forced the cancellation of those debts. So that could also help Alberta. Hold on.
So that could also help Alberta.
William Rebel says, setting up the function of a new country won't be cheap, although much of that is already performed in Alberta, and the cost can be covered by transition loans that the U.S., gives to Alberta.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to cost that much, actually. $500 billion is what's kind of earmarked that we can get from banks based upon our natural resources. I figure maybe $100 billion, but to be honest, there is going to be a large price tag on the national parks and that land, I guess. So you're going to have to earmark a couple $100 billion for that. Mainly what you're paying for is different kinds of land. The cost of that is going to be massive. But to set up the actual systems themselves, I think $100 billion is way more than enough, to be honest with you.
Troglodyte says, the Freedom Convoy folks were fun and upbeat. The anti-folks were just bitter. Same thing again with independence.
Yeah.
And being able to highlight that fact as well. Like we have hope on our side. We have an actual thing and a vision to work towards. They are only sad and bitter and angry, and they continue to be so, and they'll stay that way.
Yeah.
And which one do you want to
And the facts are already generally on our side, and the common sense is on our side. But once these white papers are done by Keith Wilson, the fundamental facts are on our side, and there are no counterfacts to counteract that. The federal government has not done any analysis on any of the things that Keith Wilson is going to be doing that analysis on.
Saltias Maximus, hello, asks, do you guys stream on X? No, not directly. We do post the stream and you can watch it from X, but on the YouTube player. We were trying to stream to X, but it kept having a lot of issues. I don't know if it's because we're streaming from Mexico, but it didn't work as well as YouTube and RUMBLE do. Well, we do stream on Rumble, though.
Yeah, our alternative platform is RUMBLE in case we ever get canceled here, because we do know it is a hot topic and cancellation may be a thing that the federal government's going to attempt at some point.
But again, right before the show starts, we always do put a post on X where you can just use the embedded player within X for YouTube, though. Okay, now let's go into Alberta personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
And I actually brought this one up, if you can bring it up, just to kind of highlight Rise of Alberta again. They're absolutely fantastic. If you're not subscribed to them on X, they're an amazing account.
Says the strongest argument for Alberta independence is simple. Canada's structure cannot be fixed. Alberta has no real leverage, no first seat at the table, and no path to resolve its grievances within Confederation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is simple, but there's a lot of good simple facts and little posters and things like this that are on Rise to Alberta that I absolutely love. I'm constantly going to them. So this is the Alberta personality section, and I usually try to highlight people that you can subscribe to or widen your idea base to. Once in a while, we'll go negative and show somebody from the other side. But yeah.
And Rise of Alberta, I think, was the one that also has a store that was doing the alt or alternative T-shirts and stuff, like with the Marlboro Man. So I think that was also a really good idea for marketing and other types of messaging that might resonate with the young people, for example.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of young people have turned now towards, and there's a lot of trends coming up. Not that I follow trends clearly, but there's a lot of trends coming up about tradition and the whole, this past Christmas we had, for example, the Ralph Lauren aesthetic for Christmas that was all about harkening back to tradition and quiet luxury. I hate that word. But all of that going back towards the past, and also the rise of the 80s and 90s now as well, and trends within Gen Z, we can lean into that because, again, we can say, yes, this is the way it used to be, but look at how what the modernity is right now and the difference between these two. And how in the 90s, yes, and we're harkening back to an era that they miss, even though they might have not lived it. Because we're seeing a lot of Gen Z
they always want to talk about Canadian history. What you need to pitch this as is Alberta is trying to save Western values and Western history, while Canada is turning its back on its own history and its own tradition.
But now let's just merge into Alberta's Canada.
Yeah.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And starting with...
And the first one we showed yesterday, but this is an important clip, and it's what I had on the cover today because, man, is this a complete turnaround. He looks like a fish flip-flopping around.
Playing Twister. Badly.
If this does not go good for him, he doesn't get USMCA, and he's brown-nosing Trump like this, his base will turn on him.
Hopefully. Mark Nixon says, quote, Mark Carney has abandoned his base. He has gone full MAGA. Our relationship is officially over with the U.S. was an election elbows up trick.
Well, and he bragged about how he was going to New York to get investment.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what you were actually going there for was put on a MAGA hat. So good to see you there, Mark.
And getting on your elbows.
As the United States approaches its 250th birthday, happy birthday, as the most in advance, but it approaches this moment as the most dynamic, resilient, and inventive country the world has ever seen. As a country whose founding values of liberty, democracy, justice, and openness should continue to serve as guides to its future and the future of the world. That future should include a new partnership with Canada, a true partnership that reimagines cooperation in specific sectors that are deeply challenged by global competition. A partnership with a different Canada, a stronger Canada, a more confident Canada, a country that is applying the lessons from past crises, a country unleashing its enormous potential, a country aggressively translating our belief in openness into dozens of new partnerships, a country that's predictable, reliable, and principled in a world that's anything but.
And he's really going to the United States trying to beg at this point. Nobody's going to invest in Canada with the business atmosphere and the regulatory atmosphere that he has created, especially with a country to your south that is deregulating and it's becoming massively business friendly, especially for manufacturing. Manufacturing, what used to take 10 years to build a manufacturing plant is now taking 2 because of the tax incentives Trump is giving. He's saying you can write off the next 10 years of taxes if you can build your manufacturing headquarters within 2 to 3 years, and it's getting built.
But now with Carney flip-flopping and bending over for the U.S. as well as China, that's getting, I'm not going to go, I was going to make a really gross joke.
Let's go into the next article.
I know, but I was using this as a transition to do that. With him doing all of this, the mainstream media, the propaganda arm, his Pravda arm, subsidized by Carney, is having difficulty trying to figure out how to position it anymore. It's getting harder and harder to be able to even understand what this man is talking about. David Creighton says, quote, Carney lies so much, CBC panelists finding it difficult to follow. It's called elasticity, apparently.
See, I'm going to start with you. A lot of what the Prime Minister said today sounded familiar. Some of it sort of made me raise an eyebrow, particularly that last line there about a strong Canada making America great again. And I wondered what you made of that and who you think he was actually talking to there.
I think he was talking to Americans. I think the Prime Minister has developed a tendency to adjust his message, sometimes in conflicting ways, depending on the audience that he is speaking to. And it is increasingly, I think, becoming obvious to Canadians that there's some elasticity in his message, shall we say, in terms of, on the one hand, you have the elbows up message, you have the framing of...
You lack first principles, and nobody knows what your actual first... I mean, we know what your first principles are, but to your base, it looks like you have no first principles. That's exactly what this looks like.
And those first principles are very elastic, but once again, they're renaming words. Lies are now called elasticity, so...
Of the Davos speech, where the rupture is a relationship between Canada's relationship vis-a-vis the United States. You have a very important narrative that is set out there that has brought public support for things that previously were more controversial, like pipeline approval and speeding up assessments for other natural resource projects. And on the other hand, you have the...
Why might that be? If they want to federalize it and actually take advantage of it, they would approve them now, even if it conflicts with their base and their path messaging.
There's another thing here, and Mark Carney may just be put it in there to set up the mechanisms, meaning the mechanisms of federalization, and get it farther enough along, and then possibly step down if the National Conservative Party is on board with federalization as well and other mechanisms, because the Federal Conservative Party would be able to willingly push that, and the people would actually get behind it, and they could push in bad policies. So you have to watch for that. Is he just there to set up certain mechanisms, then allow the Conservatives to come in there and finish off those mechanisms with different talking points?
Message he delivered today, which in the case, the word rupture here was about the global order and the world, not about the relationship of Canada vis-a-vis the United States. We had a little bit of this floating in the fall. Remember when they were talking about sectoral tariff relief on the 232 tariffs, where we have a deeper integration with the United States on energy, potentially on critical minerals. And I think that is what the Prime Minister was hinting at. Yeah. But building Fortress North America is in conflict with the idea that our relationship is forever changed and we have to completely diverse some challenges at home.
So is it, do you think, Steph, indicative of where the non-negotiations are at? Or is it, I mean, Pierre Poilievre, basically slammed the Prime Minister today because he's now, in his view, saying something different than he did before.
I mean, to pick up on what Althea said, there's elasticity in the Prime Minister's message, and where he seeks to tailor it, to whatever audience he's speaking to, it's almost as though he forgets there is no singular audience anymore. Everybody is watching what he said. So the American business leaders in that room are watching, but Canadians are also watching, and opposition politicians are watching. And when you see the Prime Minister make that reference to make America great again, and you think that's a lot of words to fit on a Canadian hat, like what is he trying to accomplish there? And I do think, to Chantal's point, it is a reframing, and it's trying to get away. If there's an irritant with the Americans, and they've raised it time and time again, it's the disparagement that Carney seems to show to the U.S. administration. That frustrates them. They understand the need for other trading.
And he's not going to be able to get his own caucus to back him up on that, which is going to be an issue, because they need to win. They're the ones that actually need to win voters and win their districts and things like that. And they've won them over with elbows up. And this is a complete betrayal of that to their own voter base.
And this also actually helps Alberta.
And conservatives don't like it because we know he's not authentic about what he's saying, and we know this isn't a real change.
But also within Alberta independence, now you can also point and say, well, what is it? Which is it, Canada? What's actually happening? There's no clear, concise either message or direction, apparently. And with Alberta independence, there is that one clear direction of independence, and then working towards strengthening and building a nation that actually works. Faith, family, and freedom.
Freedom.
Yes. Michael Geist says, quote, the RCMP appeared before the Public Safety and National Security Committee yesterday and affirmed that critics' concerns about Bill C-22 are well justified. The bill is about police gaining access to backdoors and encrypted communications. Let's remember what's his name? That guy, the little man that was talking yesterday. Well, he said that we shouldn't be concerned about this, and apparently, yes, we should be.
I just want to highlight on the notion of encryption. Of course, the world has changed, and the reality is that we currently do have abilities to intercept and to deal with encryption. But the reality is that technology is changing at a greater rate than we can keep up with legislative reform. And you've likely heard from some of my colleagues in policing, including Commissioner Karik, police leaders and police union executives have been trying to advance a lawful access framework since around 1996. And we've come close multiple times. We believe that the current climate, the geopolitical climate, is a tool that we need. We have significant national security investigations. We have significant serious organized crime investigations where encryption is at the heart of stymieing the prosecution and, quite frankly, the
privacy
of solving those.
And you can leave it there. And what they're talking is getting rid of privacy. Free speech and privacy are the fundamental values of what was Canada, but the West in general. And those are disappearing. They've completely disappeared in Canada.
But I also think, again, it's important because I think it was yesterday or the day before, the leader of the communications, what's his name? The little man that kind of looks like Winnie the Pooh as well. No, the Indian guy, whatever. He came out to say, no, there's nothing to be concerned about. This is all it's all the company's fault. The company, Apple and Google and etc. are just concerned for no reason. And now we actually RCMP coming out and saying, yeah, no, be concerned about that.
Okay, let's go into comments if we can, and then we'll go into Alberta and the world.
Why were you tapping on the table?
Well, I'll talk to you about it after.
Hold on. Where are we? Todd says, I'm angry. Oh, I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. Exactly. That's why we put that one there. And Todd says, I love PJ, but I'm not PJ. I'm Todd. Does somebody think you were PJ? Michael Drader says, Patriots know how to joke. Says, case in point, I wore an Alberta Independence t-shirt into the passport office today.
Oh, fantastic.
Good. Hopefully one day it could be into the Alberta passport office. Did they ask you? Now I'm really curious. Did they ask you about the t-shirt? Or did they say something? And hold on. Todd says, all my best friends are right here. LOL. Psychotherapy. Michael Drader says, on another note, I'm sitting across the street from Poilievre's campaign office. He's working on the side. Will that mean the for sale or lease sign will come down at his office? True. Good question.
Oh, they might want to use the campaign office as a headquarters, a staging grounds for anti-independence sentiment.
Troglodyte says, think about the savings that will happen when you stop paying benefits to immigrants and asylum scammers. True. William Babel says, Rise of Alberta is a great account to follow. Interestingly, what they stated there is applicable to all of Western Canada.
Yeah.
And many, many times it is. So again, being able to unsilo that conversation from only in Alberta or only in Quebec and start the national conversation with maybe BC, starting to think a bit deeper about all these things and how they're being treated as well, especially BC with private property rights. William Robel says, me too, or maybe Jeff Rath. Not sure what that one means, but Troglodyte says lefties can't meme, I'm guessing, because they have no sense of humor. Because they're angry. They're so angry all the time. Sanchez Maximus says CBC's main role is to run damage control for Liberals and normalize Liberal actions.
Yeah, they're having trouble with that damage control these days, especially with that MAGA speech Carney gave.
And continues, they are not outraged. They are softening the reaction for the elbows up crowd. And to be able to continue and maintain those eyeballs on them as well. Okay, let's go into Alberta and the world, and then I'll finish reading your comments. And starting with Peter St. Ong saying, quote, the Iran war was supposed to crash stocks like the 70s and send gold soaring. Instead, since America started rocking the Casbah, stocks ruled, bonds drooled, and gold got thrown off a roof. Should we be worried?
Is the Iran war telling us our economy is broken? This has been a very weird war for markets, breaking the century-long rule that war is bad for stocks, good for bonds, and rocket fuel for gold. Instead, since America started rocking the Casbah, stocks rule, bonds drool, gold got thrown off a roof. So what changed, and should we be worried? When the Iran war kicked off, Wall Street predicted a 1970s disaster when stocks dropped by half, inflation took off into the double digits, and GDP plunged, the dreaded stagflation that turned gold into the go-to late-night infomercial. Analysts called Iran, quote, the worst nightmare we thought could ever happen, incomparably worse than any oil shock in history. Reuters' poll of analysts predicted $150 oil, and unnamed Saudi officials said 180. Option markets said 200 or 240 oil. Longtime markets guru Ed Yardeni warned of a stock market meltdown. Bond guru Mohammed El-Erian warned of, quote, stagflation gripping the entire world economy. Moody's Analytics pegged 50% odds of a recession. Their script was the 1970s oil crisis when stocks did plunge by half, bonds held up with 3% gains, and gold positively sang up 70%. Well, turns out every bit of that was wrong. 3 months into the war, the S&P is not down by half. It's up 8.5%, which is 40% annualized. The long bond is actually down, annualized 20%. Gold is down 12%, annualized 50%. Wall Street Journal was mystified, writing, quote, it's hard to overstate just how unusual this is. So what changed? The first difference is oil did not get hit nearly as hard as expected. We're at 100, not 240. This is because new drilling, above all in America, and a collapse in Asian demand, above all in China, means fully 3/4 of the interrupted supply was effectively canceled. Either new drilling or less is being used. But the other reason is the stock market in 2026 is not the market in the 1970s. Namely, AI and tech are the stock market, and frankly, they don't give a damn about Iran. To illustrate, the 1970s tech was 5% of the market, but almost half.
And you can leave it there. And it's very interesting because a lot of people see this. This is not going to be a long-term war in Iran. Everybody can kind of see that. He's constantly trying to pull out or negotiate some kind of pull out here, but he needs certain terms for it. The EU, on the other hand, wants to turn Ukraine into that long-term war. They just don't have U.S. backing anymore. That's why they're hoping they can wait Trump out, get Newsom in there, and start World War III for an economic collapse and reset. That's always been their
to
plan.
benefit them.
Yeah,
exactly. But I will also I won't get into it. But now is right, I will say. The Globe and Mail says, quote, Canada, U.S. must do more to remove political risks around pipeline permits, South Bow CEO says. Once again, another CEO says, stating the obvious and the fact that Canada they just can't invest in Canada right now.
Can you read that again?
Canada, the U.S. must do more to remove political risks around pipeline permits.
Yeah, I think we read that differently.
What do you mean?
I didn't read it as, how I read that is the U.S. has already done their half. Mm-hmm. It's Canada, and this is a Canadian outlet. Therefore, they're trying to pitch it as, it's Canada, America that have to deregulate. No, it's Canada. America has already done their half.
Yeah, but again, it is a CEO coming out once again and saying that to be able to invest and actually build in Canada, to merge those two together once again.
But they're trying to build a narrative that it's America and Canada, and they're trying to use that CEO to pitch that narrative that it's both, but it's not both, because most CEOs come out and say it's just Canada, and the CEO came out to say it's America, Canada.
Or maybe that's just the way they wrote it. Sometimes they do change people's words. Let's just
I kind of brought it up to say America has done their part. They've already approved multiple pipelines. They've completely deregulated. They're just waiting for Canada, and they may keep waiting on Canada. Alberta gets its independence, and it already has a partner ready to dance.
True. And lastly, from Scott Robertson says, quote, Dominique LeBlanc on Pete Hoekstra whining about the booze ban. Let's remind ourselves, David, the provincial governments made those decisions in response to the American tariffs, which didn't respect the free trade agreement.
Seen the ambassador's comments. But again, let's remind ourselves, David, the provincial governments made those decisions in response to the American tariffs, which didn't respect the free trade agreement.
You don't have to convince me.
No, a retaliation on a retaliatory measure, you can see the race to the basement. That's not particularly constructive. Seen the ambassadors.
And it's a race to the basement for Canada only, and that's going to be the issue. And Carney's given speeches about how he's pro-MAGA now, but the rest of his base just hasn't got the script yet, I guess.
But also, again, a lot of those tariffs and within the free trade agreement, Canada continues to lie about the fact that Canada was already imposing a lot way higher tariffs on the U.S. than.
And we're not going to go to RUMBLE today. We will read the comments though.
We can though. I think. Okay. Todd says, hold on. Michael Trader says, nope, I really wanted to rage bait. Todd says, I'm Todd, hurting Albertan. Corbland, give a lesson to, it's one of my theme. Don't understand that one. Todd says, not sure how I put a lesson in there. LOL. Oh, that's why. That's how you know I'm tired. I can't type or spell. And apparently I can't read today. So maybe that's why. Maybe we're all just tired because it's Friday. But I will be back at 5 p.m. William Rebell says, as an American, can I ask you Albertans to drop the U in words like humor, honor, labor, etc.? Also use imperial units like inches, feet, and gallons. You and Sean should start a campaign on that for the independent Alberta, because both of you always say the exact same thing. I think in Canada, there are some and some people that do use the no U, and then other people that were taught with the U. I was taught with the U's and I wasn't even in Canada at that point. DeBilber says, William, love to back inch and gallon. I'm old school. No, William would love to go back to inches and gallons. I'm old school. William Rebell says, Jason Levine and Nico Lagan did a chat about the C-22 bill. Hold on. Where were we? DeBilber says, that was a great chat. Troglodyte says, I don't know Polyev had a permit to land there with parachutes. And hold on. Should I read the RUMBLE ones, or are we going to RUMBLE?
Yeah, no, read them now.
Okay. Oh, there's a lot. KP4U says, well, they are constantly adding special groups. That's just more conquer and divide. Exactly. Rusty Wiener says, they don't have ideas. They only have mean words and brain rot. And very clearly so as well. Hold on. Rusty says, I'd happily trade passports with some leftists in the USA. And again, we've talked about that, because actually that might work. Just have a people exchange.
No, that's not good, because then we don't have a critical mass of people to vote for independence.
No, but once Alberta is independent.
No.
Rusty says, all the Canadians understand is fear. They're overexposed to it. I suspect it's where the hatred comes from. They're shell-shocked from the C-19 and can't move. And KP4U says, pertaining to the younger guy that knows what he wants but can't explain it, it's more likely the role models in his circle that he looks up to. That's an interesting point, actually. Yeah. Rusty says, the Canadian pension isn't on the table at all. It's a mandatory system with the federal government. Alberta leaves, the Fed still owes CPP unless they're admitting they're robbing us. And that would be hard for them to admit. Hold on. Rusty says you can move to Hawaii and still collect your pension payments. It shouldn't be any different than under the current arrangement.
Yeah,
that's true. That would be a good as well thing to highlight. KPVU says they sound so useless out east. They need the government for everything. They're just so mindless. And hold on. Rusty says it's funny that too much makeup here burnt his bridges with Trump, and now Carney flipped.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because and he bet too much on that, and now, well, here we are.
Yeah.
Hold on. And Lovefest says, good day, beautiful people. Good day, and thank you for being here. And yes, unfortunately, we are not going over to RUMBLE, but we will be back at 5 p.m. tonight. Something else?
No, that's it.
We'll be back at 5 p.m. tonight for our regular live stream. We'll see you there. Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. And to hit that like button as well.
Adios.
We'll see you in a little bit.